I'm just a tinkerer on the backside of nowhere. Such an unlikely character for an operation like this. What one wants in terms of a drug conspiracy is to be dull and ordinary. You have to cultivate a persona that no one is going to look at. I drove an old piece of junk and I wore a pair of bib overalls and a flannel shirt. It was a perfect disguise. When you do that, then you can do what you want to do.
I'm John Roberts, and this is the Godfather of Fentanyl.
On the East Coast today, drug deaths in the news.
Police are warning of a new and deadly hazard, a toxic drug.
Fentanyl is normally used as a painkiller in surgery, but more powerful fentanyl is on the streets, and it's deadly.
On the street, it's called Tango and Cash, and it can hit 100 times harder than heroin.
Narcotics agents say the synthetic stuff is so strong that many of its users end up in places like this.
By early March 1991, less than 4 weeks since fentanyl first hit the streets of New York City, 36 people are confirmed dead. Hundreds of others are hospitalized. It's all the work of George Eric Marquardt, the criminal chemist who goes by the nickname Squeak. He created the street fentanyl in his home lab in Wichita, Kansas. But even he is stunned by just how lethal its release is proving to be.
After all the bodies dropped out in New York City, I was personally cynical about whether fentanyl could replace the U.S. supply of heroin. I thought fentanyl would be too difficult for the dealers to handle. You know, they made a number of very conventional assumptions. One, that the stuff could be easily diluted.
Today, it's commonly known that it only takes a few grains of pure street fentanyl to kill a person. But in early 1991, when Marquardt's fentanyl was first sold as a heroin substitute, most street dealers and addicts had never encountered this drug before. In fact, it will take roughly 2 more decades for fentanyl to emerge in the pill form that we often see today. So early users injected it directly into their veins, just like heroin.
Then I saw the dealers adjusting and the customers learning how to deal. By learning how to deal, I refer to learning how to do it without killing themselves. Now, do I think it's good for people to do these things? No, I do not. If you keep doing it, it'll probably kill you. It's going to ruin your life. It's going to do all kinds of terrible things to you. But that appears to be what they want. So who am I to stop them?
The phenomenon of addiction is something I don't think people truly understand. It is a serious illness that affects many, many people.
All I remember was waking up in a shower, dripping wet.
There was no high. It was just lights out.
There was a lot of people died, a lot of friends of mine, a lot of people I know.
Even after that, my first words were, I gotta get some more of that.
They know that this drug is taking their life from them slowly. But they are so addicted that their entire existence is centered around getting the drug that they need. And so the people who supply the drugs, their moral compass is seriously askewed because they are truly preying on some of the weakest people in society.
In the summer of '91, I got the operation so that it would work beginning to end in about 5 or 6 days, with substantial yields with fentanyl. Muscatello actually came down and got my second batch.
Following the initial release of the street fentanyl, Boston mob-connected Christopher Muscatello, the original financier of the operation, strong-armed his way back in as the drug's distributor. He is now demanding Marquardt pay off what he claims is a $1 million debt. So Marquardt is producing new, larger batches of fentanyl, which Muscatello is taking out to cities all over the Northeast through the Boston mob's established drug distribution network.
For most of the summer, Muscatello was putting the pressure on for production. Every 2 or 3 months, Mario got a few $1,000 out of Muscatello, picked up some fentanyl from me, paid me, and flew out of Wichita next day. Since the bulk of product was not large, you could transport it a great distance. The rule was double bag or triple bag, stick it on person, tape to body. Kind of a hazardous operation when pure. Until we paid off this magic $1 million figure to Muscatello pillaged, we owed him. He wasn't going to give us our full share of the fentanyl price. I knew I was being had, but he was the only reliable source of money we had. So you just have to keep him going and hope for the best.
We were very concerned because fentanyl was now being identified in overdose deaths in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. So where's it coming from?
If you find drugs on the street, they came from one of 4 sources. They were either smuggled here, they were manufactured here, they were cultivated like marijuana here, or they were diverted from some legitimate industry like the medical industry to an illicit use. Those are the only ways you get drugs.
To start tracking down the source of the deadly fentanyl, law enforcement begins at the end of the drug trafficking chain, the street deal.
We knew that the street distribution was important because that would hopefully give us links to find out the source. Heroin has different colors depending on its origin. In the case of the fentanyl investigation, the local police were saying that it was distinguishable by the fact that it was sparkly. So we started to go out and buy heroin from street dealers, but only asking for the sparkly stuff. So how do you make this approach as an undercover? It takes only a few minutes of surveillance to see who's dealing. Then you walk up to the guy and say, hey,
what's going on?
Do you have any tango and cash? Be direct. Say exactly what you want.
We got? I got bottle. How much?
$7 for you. You might do a dance. Oh man, I'm not selling to you, you're a cop. But drug dealers are in it to make money. Eventually, they will sell you the drug.
See the money right here? See the exchange?
And you say, thank you very much, and you walk away. If the drug was indeed fentanyl, then we would go back and we would surveil them. A street dealer, you watch him long enough, he will run out of drugs to sell, you would have to be resupplied. Then your surveillance concentrates on that resupplier. And then try to work your way up, work your way up, work your way up until you hopefully find the source of the drug.
Throughout the summer of 1991, agents worked the streets of major cities all over the Northeast, while chemists with the Drug Enforcement Administration analyzed the purchased samples to try to uncover clues to the fentanyl's origin. New York-based DEA chemist Jack Fasanella leads this effort.
My analysis concluded that all of the samples were fentanyl hydrochloride, which is not the commercial form of fentanyl.
This microscopic clue in the fentanyl's chemical composition has massive significance.
That indicated to me that it was clandestinely manufactured.
In other words, they realized that someone, somewhere, must have ingeniously altered the standard formula of fentanyl to reinvent it as a street drug.
At the time, fentanyl was a very difficult synthesis, so I felt that whoever was producing this material, and in such quantities, was a good clandestine chemist.
Based on this, DEA concludes that a single chemist is probably responsible for all the fentanyl. Now, they must find the chemist and shut him down.
In the case of running a drug manufacturing plant, you ask yourself, if you were sitting on the other side of the fence, how is it that you would detect someone like me? And then you'd find a way of doing it without getting caught. First off, the people selling these drugs did not know me, so I thought that offered me a certain amount of safety. But the next thing I thought is, how long is it going to be before law enforcement figures this out? I mean, that was absolutely astonishing that we didn't get caught in Boston with the benzene fiasco.
A year earlier, Mark Ward's partner, moneyman Christopher Moscatello, was nearly arrested while purchasing chemicals for the fentanyl lab.
After that, I decided the convenience of buying easily available bulk chemicals is outweighed by the risk involved. So that's when it pays to get creative.
When manufacturing illicit drugs, clandestine chemists usually purchase starter chemicals known as precursors. The companies that sell these chemicals know they can be used for drug manufacturing, and so they keep detailed records of all transactions. And those records can be a clue for investigators.
If you buy it and it goes on an order form someplace and it goes in a receipt someplace, the bureaucrats will have access to that, and conceivably this can be discovered. This is the kind of thing you want to avoid. What the DEA would do is just go through the receipts, anything that looked unusual to them, and that disturbed me. So I needed a better plan, right? Instead of buying precursors, I would make all of my own.
If it was a chemical and he needed to make it, Squeak could make it every step of the way. It was all part of trying to not get caught, which is what all of us who do that sort of thing try to do.
That worked to disguise things from the federal narcotics agents.
But only someone of his genius would be able to figure it out and pull it off.
You know, I had a bunch of people thoroughly fooled. I've even lied like hell to my sister.
Both of our parents died fairly young without speaking to Eric. But before that, Mom encouraged me to write to him. So we wrote to each other over the years, and eventually it was not just writing, it was long, collect phone calls. I was never in control of when I heard from him. Just occasionally he would call and talk for a few hours. When we heard in the news about the fentanyl, of course, I realized that my brother was capable of such things. But I made the assumption that with his track record, the federal government would know where he was.
We really thought people were watching him closely, you know.
Such was not the case, as it turns out. I got the impression my name had not surfaced because of my lack of academic credentials.
Police found the bodies of 3 more people.
In the past week, 5 deaths have been reported from fentanyl.
In one case, an addict died while standing up.
There was a statement made by a forensic chemist that he didn't think anyone with less than a master's degree could possibly produce fentanyl.
DEA has discovered the chemist producing fentanyl would have a master's or doctorate degree in chemistry.
I thought that was extremely amusing. I was just unbelievably delighted, so I wasn't looked at with any particular amount of attention. In the fall of 1991, there were several trips to Boston. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth we went. And I thought we were going to clear the debt with Muscatello and start getting some real money for this thing. But then Muscatello said he wanted me to make him some 3-methylfentanyl. He said, make 25 pounds and we'll pay you. I thought, Jesus fucking Christ, that's dangerous chemistry.
3-methylfentanyl is a chemical compound similar to fentanyl, but it is about 60 times more potent.
The difference between fentanyl and 3-methylfentanyl is just one little methyl group. It's a very small change, but that small change is in an important place on the molecule. An amount of 3-methylfentanyl that would fit in your pocket could wipe out a whole town.
That's a royal road to destruction. And so I became suspicious about exactly who Muscatello was actually involved with.
At the time, James Whitey Bulger is known as the kingpin of Boston's organized crime scene. Among Bulger's closest associates are the so-called Murray brothers, Joseph and Michael.
And I'd heard that Muscatello dealt with Mike Murray. Joe Murray was kind of I wasn't sure what the association was there. But I knew they were some very dangerous people.
The Murray brothers operate from the shadows and are known to have ties that extend to violent overseas terrorist groups, like the Irish Republican Army.
Several incidents of violence yesterday in Northern Ireland. Irish Republican Army terrorists exploded 2 bombs in London today.
The IRA says it was behind an explosion that rocked a small town.
Let us pin the responsibility for these appalling crimes to where it belongs, on the common murderers of the IRA.
Just a few years earlier, Joseph Murray and Whitey Bulger had led a plot to smuggle 7.5 tons of weapons aboard a fishing boat to the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, a group that was waging terror attacks against British rule in Northern Ireland. The Valhalla incident, as it was known, ended in failure, but it is a good reason for Marquardt to question Muscatello's interests and intentions with the 3-methylfentanyl.
After the Valhalla incident, I thought maybe the organized crime types up in Boston wanted to weaponize this stuff and cause trouble. For all that I know, they could have every intention of destroying the civilized world. I thought, no. I'm not a terrorist. I thought it was a scam to get me to deliver highly potent drugs, and maybe they would kill me so that I wouldn't turn up inconveniently later. And so I told Muscatello, well, you know, it is extremely difficult to manufacture. I knew that would buy me some time.
By the summer of 1992, the fentanyl investigation has been going on for more than a year.
Some cops call Kearney Avenue here in Jersey City the war zone. They make as many as 25 arrests in one day.
Meanwhile, in another drug raid, part of an ongoing investigation into the increasing use of a drug that can kill within seconds.
But despite the enormous effort by law enforcement, they have yet to uncover any significant leads into where the deadly drug is coming from.
The arrests have not, however, led to the source.
The investigation is continuing.
And while the fentanyl investigation slowly grinds on, agents across the country are caught up in a much bigger war against drugs of all kinds.
There is a crisis demanding our attention. Drug production and drug use threaten our futures and our very lives. We are determined to defeat this enemy speedily.
Americans paid $40 billion for illegal drugs last year.
It's a hell of a lot of money being spent for drugs.
The federal report shows an increase in marijuana and methamphetamine.
If you thought acid parties were a thing of the past, you're dead wrong.
The cocaine business certainly rivals any of the top Fortune 500 companies.
What no one in law enforcement can foresee is that an unrelated case will crack the fentanyl investigation wide open.
At the time of the fentanyl investigation, another agent asked me to assist in the surveillance of a truck that was heading from Boston down towards Mexico to pick up 4 tons of marijuana.
Agents of the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration swept down on a large rented truck. The arrest ended a long investigation by both agencies.
We ended up arresting Michael Murray of the Murray brothers.
It's Michael Murray's second offense for trafficking thousands of pounds of marijuana. Only this time, his arrest will have explosive consequences.
At that time, I did not know that the Michael Murray investigation had information with regard to the laboratory.
It's a close-knit community until it isn't anymore. Once somebody's arrested, it's what are they going to offer you? And if there gets to be a rat in the ointment, well, loose lips sink ships, as the old saying goes.
Michael Murray recognizes that he was in trouble, and he needs to do something to help himself get out of it. He said that he would cooperate with the federal government to lessen his sentence. A cooperating source will speak ad nauseum about anyone and anything as long as he's not explicitly implicated. That is, he is a totally innocent guy who just happens to have all this inside criminal information that he's been happy to share with the government. But no, he was never directly involved. Eventually, Michael Murray says, "Hey guys, I think I can help you with the fentanyl case." And I said, "Great." Michael Murray tells us that Christopher Muscatello is financing the fentanyl laboratory. Period.
It's a bombshell revelation. Christopher Muscatello is immediately recognized as the suspect who 2 years earlier had eluded the DEA after purchasing a 50-gallon drum of benzene. At the time, agents were investigating a fake company called TX Green. They now realize TX Green was actually the start of the fentanyl lab.
And so now we went back to looking closer at TX Green. Although now we were calling it Tango and Cash investigation.
I formulate plans to follow up on Murray's cooperation, because now Michael Murray has to enter a new phase of the investigation. He has to be an active participant in the case. We had to send Michael Murray in to speak to Christopher Moscatello.
Michael Murray and Christopher Moscatello have a long history of working together. A few years earlier, they were both arrested for marijuana trafficking. Agents now plan to use that trusted relationship to their advantage.
Michael Murray is basically instructed to set up and meet him with Moscatello.
Murray is wired with a hidden microphone, so the agents can monitor this meeting remotely.
These two individuals know each other quite well, and I think they considered each other friends.
I only knew Michael Murray by name, but Chris told me that he was a friend, his best friend. Chris had a very small circle of people in his life, and Michael Murray being his best friend, Chris trusted him explicitly.
After a few minutes of talking, we hear Moscatello tell Murray that he's concerned because they're getting too much heat, too much attention on distributing the fentanyl. So maybe we'll kind of make some pills for a while.
The agents immediately see an opportunity. They have Murray tell Moscatello that he can connect him with a New York City gangster who has access to a pill press and can help them make illicit pills while the heat on the fentanyl dies down.
Michael Murray says, here's a telephone number. Have your chemist call this guy. And Moscatello said that he would have his chemist call the number. That number was my telephone number. Within a short time period, I received a call. Because of my upbringing as a Brooklyn kid, I can have a very big Brooklyn accent, if need be. So I say that I'm Jerry from New York, alluding that I was tied into organized crime. And it was Martier, Joseph Martier.
Joseph Martier is a name familiar to agents. During the TX Green investigation 2 years earlier, he was seen purchasing laboratory-grade glassware. The agents now wonder if Martier is the chemist producing the Tango and Cash street fentanyl.
We started talking about chemical processes. Making pills. There was a very popular pill called Lemon 714s, aka Quaaludes. Martier wanted to make counterfeit Lemon 714s. So I said, I can get you a pill press. I can go meet you at your laboratory with the pill press, and I can make the pills for you, and we could set up business together.
But Martier declines an in-person meeting. Instead, he turns the conversation to how he can make the pills himself.
After a few minutes of talking, I said, you know that you can have all the raw powder of Lemon 714s, the drug itself, but do you know anything about binding the material in order to make the pills? Do you know how to use the press to stamp the pills to make them look like lemons? Do you know the exact colorant in order to counterfeit the pills? And as we got deep in this conversation, it became clear that his ignorance was incredible. In terms of aha moments, the aha was that Martier was not the, I mean with the big capital T, chemist making fentanyl.
Martier had called me one day And he said something like the Muscatello operation offered to come up with a pill press. I got to thinking, isn't that peculiar? I don't think it's a good idea. You know, if you're going to stay above water in the drug game for any length of time, you have to stay off the radar. But Martyr persisted. So finally I said, I don't know a lot about this. Could you talk to these guys? I had nose for bullshit.
By this point, the agents realize a third unknown criminal accomplice must still be out there. And so they instruct Michael Murray to confront Christopher Muscatello to see if they can gain further clues about who the chemist really is.
In a normal drug trafficking situation, Murray now would have problems with New York mobsters in that he is unreliable. Murray says to Muscatello, who the hell was the guy that the New York wise guy was speaking with? These guys are upset. They want to know if I'm setting them up. Believe it or not, this leads to Muscatello mentioning the fact that, well, the actual chemist is a guy named Squeak. And that is the first time we hear the name Squeak. The Drug Enforcement Administration maintains a lot of records on individuals who are arrested, and part of those records includes aliases. So using the name Squeak, I come up with a George Marquardt, who was arrested in Oklahoma for drug trafficking and running a laboratory. So we finally identified who we believe to be the chemist. But now the big question, the looming question is, where is the laboratory?
Unbeknownst to the investigators, Marquardt is, at that very moment, expanding his drug manufacturing operation.
Muscatello was pestering me. When are you going to do the 3-methylfentanyl? When are you going to do the 3-methylfentanyl? Sometime, yeah, sometime. There existed a considerable amount of bad feeling, but I thought the bad feeling was overcome by greed. By this time, I had gotten about $100,000 out of Muscatello. Muscatello had aspirations to manufacture every sort of insane and profitable drug on the planet and leapfrog to the next level of production with the fentanyl operation. I was interested in getting paid, making money, you know. But to do that, I needed more space. That's when we rented the facility at the industrial park. It was just absolutely perfect for clandestine manufacturing. I simply toted the equipment out there and set up shop and got busy. I called it Prairie Lab.
He told me that he had his own business and it was called Prairie Lab, and he would do consulting.
He said he did a lot of work for the oil and gas industry down in Kansas. So he had an excuse for anything he was doing.
If anybody says, what's going on here? This looks like a big chemical operation. Indeed it does.
I'm Ed Lobel. I rented the other half of the building by George in the industrial park. He was super nice, super laid back, just could have played Santa Claus every Christmas. George never led on to be genius material or that he was like super smart. I always thought George was just a chemist from the kind of work he did. The inside of his office looked like a Frankenstein laboratory. Pumps, motors, lines, electric stuff going everywhere to it. I was young at the time and just always wondered how people made their money, and noticed he had a lot of stuff in his shop. And I asked him one day how he made his money, and he said, making drugs. I kind of laughed. I just figured he was joking to tell me to mind my own business and not ask him where he made his money.
He didn't hide. He wasn't hiding. He had a wonderful relationship with everybody who knew him.
If you're engaged in something, you want just kind of a friendly, well, good morning. Would you like a cup of coffee? That kind of thing. My neighbors out in the industrial park, they just couldn't understand a pair of bib overalls and a flannel shirt. It was a perfect disguise, really. And what he thought was exactly what I wanted him to think. You know, oh, I never could imagine. And when you do that, then you can do what you want to do. Which is having a lot of glassware set up in a rotary evaporator, spinning merrily around in stirrers, turning in multi-neck flasks, and things refluxing in the vacuum pump and thumping away. I thought it was just absolutely wonderful. Prairie Lab gave us the capability to produce many pounds of fentanyl efficiently. So a whole bunch of possibilities open up.
Back in Boston, DEA agents have discovered that Marquardt hasn't been seen by law enforcement in the state of Oklahoma for several years. They are monitoring the meetings between mobster informant Michael Murray and fentanyl distributor Christopher Moscatello in the hopes of finding another way to locate Marquardt and the lab.
During one of the conversations between Murray and Moscatello, Moscatello actually sat down and wrote out the fact that they were making $6,000 on each death of a person from fentanyl. What happens is, in the mind of an individual who's addicted to drugs, when you find out that fentanyl is a potent drug, they're going to roll the dice and take the drug because they're searching for that ultimate high. So heroin users started actually seeking out fentanyl and creating more demand. But for Moscatello to say they were actually calculating how much money they were making off of each death of fentanyl. That kind of ticked me off. That's when Moscatello states that they're trying to increase production. So Michael Murray says, I can provide a very credible high-level cocaine dealer with an established distribution network of drugs to help in the distribution of the fentanyl. Moscatello, being a person that Moscatello was probably seeing dollar signs in his mind. So Moscatello goes away with the idea that Murray, his trusted friend, is going to help him. This gives us an opportunity to introduce an undercover agent to Moscatello to pretend to be a Colombian cocaine trafficker who was interested in utilizing their distribution network with the fentanyl.
At the time, there was only one Colombian agent in DEA.
And that person was Herman Blanco.
Hello. After more than a year and a half of investigating, DEA agents are now poised to crack the fentanyl case wide open. and close in on the laboratory.
Neighbors never suspected a drug lab next door.
In the most unexpected place in America.
They found the chemicals used to make fentanyl.
If they could do it. Before Marquardt slips away.
Maybe it's smarter than we all know.
Coming up on The Godfather of Fentanyl. DEA introduces its undercover agent to infiltrate the fentanyl operation.
If this guy wanted to kidnap me, or wanted to shoot me, or whatever he wanted to do, nobody was going to back me up.
While Marquardt prepares to slip away.
He knew sooner or later he was going down. And so he started getting all his ducks in a row.
You know, I could disappear, go somewhere else.